Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, the podcast for dads, especially the ones that love sneakers. I'm your host, KG, and however you're watching and listening, you could be watching and listening to anything right now, so the fact that you're here hanging out means a whole lot. Well, this is episode 2, and today we have our first guest interview, and it is one of my best friends in the entire world, Anthony Washington, aka Love the Poet. I'm so excited for you guys to hear from this dude. Anthony has been one of my best friends for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that now. And we have been friends for a while, but our friendship actually really picked up through Xbox, believe it or not. Man, my wife got me an Xbox a number of years ago, and we started jumping on playing games together and started actually really connecting more through that. And that just built into a real friendship, a better friendship in real life, man. And I love this dude, and honestly, keeping it 100, don't know if I'd be alive today if it wasn't for this dude. He's got a huge heart of gold for people, and that starts right in his home. He's got an amazing wife, April, who I adore her. I love her, and she has a little girl that you're going to hear a whole lot about that is now Anthony's stepdaughter, and then they have a little boy of their own that is just over a year old. And so you're going to get to hear all about that. We're going to be talking about leading in the family and the roles in a blended family household. And so I'm so excited for you guys to be able to hear from him, because it's something a perspective that I don't necessarily have. And so I think it's great to be able to hear from a guest like this to educate us and to inspire us in that way. And before we jump into that, this week's Kick of the Week is right behind me right here. It is the Jordan 312. It's a red Jordan 312. And Jordan 312 is not extremely well known, a little slept on. But I like them, and this is the Kick of the Week this week because this was a gift from Anthony Washington a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, something like that. I believe it was a birthday gift that he got me. But now every single time that I lace him up and put him on, I say a prayer for him. And anytime that I'm gifted a pair of sneaks from somebody, that's one of my things is I pray for him as I lace him up. Just a little memento for me, I guess. So that is this week's Kick of the Week is the Jordan 312. But let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into this episode. Here we go. All right, let's jump in. You already heard the intro about my boy Anthony. So, Amp, welcome to Kicks and Minivans, man. Appreciate you joining me, bro.
Yo, man, thank you for having me. Kind of excited, and expectations is going crazy about, how this is going to go. But I'm just here to be transparent and hopefully helpful to some other fathers out there, some other husbands. If you're looking to be a husband, don't run. No, I'm only joking. But
we'll edit that out later.
Looking forward, and thank you. But
I mean, it ain't for the faint of heart, though. Being a husband, being a father ain't for the faint of heart. It ain't for the weak. That's for sure, man. But
I just think that I think that goes for leadership in general.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When you're leading people, everybody got their own will. You know what I mean? Some people are always going to disagree with you. And with this portion of with this level of leadership of being manhood and fatherhood, you should be emotionally invested, right? And so when stuff don't go your way, or the people that you're leading are actually seemingly against you, it's just like that can take a toll. I know we ain't even getting to the questions yet. We're already getting.
Bro, I was gonna start light. We was gonna talk about sneakers, and he's just jumping in. I love that though, man. I think I think you're right, man. It's one thing to lead yourself, and I think enough men have a hard enough time leading themselves with self-discipline, But then you talk about leading a family, which I believe it's like men were created to lead their families. That's how God designed it. That just presents a whole new set of issues because you can't make people do stuff. It's like you can make your little kids do something to a degree. But even I got a 2-year-old, man, I cannot, he has to pick out his clothes now. Right? He has to pick out his whole outfit. So, all his drip is gone. all his swag's gone. Because he don't let me match him no more. And it's like, yo, he's got like the yellow pants with the orange socks with the green shirt, because that's what he wants. Like, I can't make him, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, all right, so how do you lead in the midst of that? When you said like when people are seemingly against you, like how do you respond to that?
Well, you go back to the ultimate leader, right? One of the great things about Christianity is that it's the humility of Christianity, right? Meaning, no matter what God allows you to have and what God gives you and what God puts you over, you're still an underling to Him, right? So when it becomes overwhelming, I can go back to the ultimate father. I can go back to the ultimate leader and be like, bro, like, what is, like, and I do this, like, what is happening? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, like, yo, this is not panning out the way I think it should, you know? And we, you know, not to get all deep theological about, you know, what his answer is or if he answers, but in a sense, just lay my cares on him because, you know, for me, it's kind of easy not to take things personal. Like I got a lot of thick skin that way. But I know that's not every man, you know?
Yep.
You know, it's hard to be the head when the wife is against you. It's hard to be a head when your children are acting in such a way as if you never raised them, and I ain't just talking about little people. I'm talking about teenagers, talking about preteens, kids even in your 20s. You know, I'm like, yo, you didn't learn. What are you doing? Yeah. Or you specifically told them something, and they just like, Dad, I know what I'm doing. Mind your business. And then here it is. They do it. They do opposite of what you told them to do, and then they crash. Then it's just like you struggle with that's what you get. You know what I mean? You struggle with the throwing it back in their face, and it's like, okay, now is the time for me to be a father, right? And so, and because you were trying to avoid that, you know, and so I have my bonus baby. She's 6 years old that I married into. She's autistic. And she's brilliant in so many ways. In other ways, she has some challenges. And we can't get her to eat a lot of things. She's actually really squeamish about her mouth, really, for real. Like, we struggle with her at the dentist or just, like, regularly brushing her teeth. Some days she want to brush her teeth. Some days she don't want nothing near her lips, you know? And, like, she only want to eat food. Like, yo, she's in love with some, you know, potatoes, French fries, and hash browns. I'm like, yo, you need protein, you need vegetables, you need all these things. Who's
not in love with French fries though?
Right. But she just, you know, and you trying to, and you know, we get so many, in a sense, threats from the doctors stating like, yo, if she don't start eating, we're gonna have to do this. If she don't start eating, we're gonna have to do that. And we know that she hates the doctor. So we're trying to get her like, yo, you need to eat a sandwich, you need to eat, you know, this bowl of fruit. Because if you don't, you're going right back to the place where you hate. And you know, and if we get there, if a father gets to the point of having watched their child suffer the consequences because because the children are being undisciplined, it's a part of fatherhood. Right? It ain't a basketball team. Yo, do what I tell you to do or sit the bench or get traded.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? There is no bench and there's no other team for the other child to go to. So
right. And I think like it's hard as a dad to sit there. Like just this morning, my 2-year-old was jumping in the baby's crib and we're like, Jay, stop doing that. Jay, stop doing that. Jay, stop doing that. He wouldn't stop doing it. All of a sudden he falls and he hits his head against the side of the crib. And we're like, I told you, bro. Like, this is why I told you. And it's like, sometimes as a parent, like, just to keep it real, you're like, trying to tell him to not do something, like, don't jump off the couch. And you're like, I hope he gets hurt like a little bit, like not like real bad, but like you're almost like, I hope you stub a toe or something. Where it's like, nature's consequences. Nature's consequences will teach you what I'm trying to help you with. But it's like, I think that's a part of parenting too, where it's like, yo, you have to like let them experience pain. I think a lot of parents will try to go through and like whatever they have to do to keep their child protected in this little bubble so they don't experience pain in the world. And they like try to insulate them, like wrap them in bubble wrap their entire life so that they don't experience any pain. And then all of a sudden they turn 15, 16, 17 years old and they discover like a whole world out there that their parents never prepared them for. Right? And all of a sudden they're experiencing pain in a whole new level, but the drop is a lot further than it is when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. You know, so I think like it builds some character in them, letting them experience some pain along the way in these little ways, you know, experience failure, experience setback. And that's a part of leading them, I think, too. Wow, dude. That is. You jumped right into it. I love it though, man.
We can take it from the top.
I love it though. I love it, man.
That was unexpected. Like I really had no script. Like, you know what I mean?
That was not in my notes.
The conversation.
That was not in my notes.
Lesson number 1: let your child bust his head open so he'll learn.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, you know, it's helping somebody out there though. All right, so you mentioned you have a I forget what the word that you use. Your bonus daughter. Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
Your bonus daughter. All right. So give our listeners a quick snapshot of that. Like, tell us about your family, who you live with.
Well, I live with a bunch of crumb snatchers. I've been married for 2 years, to April, and April came as a package deal with Zoe. I think I entered Zoe's life like right before she turned 2. And you know, me and Zoe hit it off before me and April hit it off for real. Because me and April, I guess, were still friends. And I'm very experienced with children. Like I'm a goddad to like seven different godchildren over the last 12 or 13 years. Actually longer than that. But I would say last 12, 13 years because my oldest godson, which is like, he's like 20. I didn't really play the role in his life because I was still young. I didn't really play the role in his life, you know, back when he was a kid, more or less, right when he got into college. But very experienced with children. And so April wasn't, right? And so Zoe, like I said, she's autistic, mildly autistic. And yet she's a toddler, and so they were at my house. I had a bunch of people at my house fellowshipping, watching some kind of sports game. Might have been the Eagles, and I said, you know, I'm gonna go upstairs and chill for a minute, but I'll take Zoe with me or whatever. And because I think she was out of hand. I think she was crying or something. And I was like, we can go watch cartoons upstairs. Plus, I could chill. And April, she kind of warned me, like, I don't know, she's a little, you know, handful. And at the time, well, I still do. My bed is really high. My bed is like a little too high for a baby that is active that could fall off the bed, you know. So, you know, I was like, no, I'll watch her or whatever. And yo, when I tell you, this was my first time with Zoe alone, even though her mom was right outside, right downstairs. Yo, that little girl was like, pew! Like she was looking to nosedive off the bed, bro. She was like, oh my God, this bed is so high. Let me jump off. Like, you know, and it was just like,
it's like an amusement park.
Right. It was
big
really
adult
bad.
bed, man.
She really did challenge me, but we wrestled a little bit and I put the cartoons on, and then eventually, I got a picture of it somewhere too. She calmed down, right? She calmed down, kind of had like this kind of posture here, where but
Mm.
her elbow was dead in my throat, right? And I was just like, this is strangely uncomfortable, but it's a small price to pay for you being still, right? And I
Yeah.
think I took a picture. I took a picture of it, laughing like, "Yo, Shorty is so busy, but if this what it takes for her to be comfortable and to enjoy herself and be still, then I'm gonna lay right here with this elbow in my throat."
Hmm.
So me and Zoe, we got along really, really well early on, and I became the fun guy till I became dad, you know. And obviously, me and April's situation changed. Liking each other, dating, engagement, and now here we are um, with another baby. And so, uh, being a stepdad to Zoe and me and Zoe, it has been seamless because it seems as if God set up the relationship to be established early and not starting that marriage.
Mm. Mm. So like all right, so when my wife told me we were pregnant with our first son, we had been married almost 5 years at that point, 4 or 5 years. And, like we had 9 months to prepare, right? You like on the one hand, y'all were engaged for like 7 or 8 months and y'all dated for a year before you were engaged, right?
That's correct.
So you had like 19, 20 months or something like that before you were married, before you were officially stepdad. But like you also like just jumped right into this father figure role, even though you weren't technically stepdad for almost 2 years. You jumped right into this father figure role with Zoe,
Yes.
like off the jump from the get go, right? Like
Yes.
how was that like jumping into the father figure role like immediately, but then also like I'm not technically legally your stepdad for like a year and a half later. Like what was that transition like as opposed to, when your son was born, y'all had 9 months to prepare for him coming, you know? What was the
it was
preparation like?
it wasn't no preparation for me. Uh, I had no choice but to live with April due to my circumstances at my house, my previous home.
Mm.
Was very, very unexpected, and April opened her doors to me, and so we were newly engaged with the plans to for her to leave her apartment and to move into my house, right? And we were still going to be living together prior to marriage, but it was going to be a lot later and closer to the wedding date than it was what actually happened.
Hmm.
Um, and so I proposed. You were there when I proposed, but the very next week, my freaking house almost blows up.
Hmm.
Due to gas problems, and they couldn't get the gas back on, and it's the dead middle of the winter, right? And so April was just like, "Yo, pack a bag, let's go." You know what I'm saying? I'm like, "You can't stay here. I have hot water, I have heat." And so I was like, "All right." So I move in, and and when I tell you the transition, and now looking back, we know it's God, right? Because it was like when I said yes to God about April, a lot of things in my life shifted, and it was like no going back from this point forward. It was like a fast forward to getting married, right? And that's
Hmm.
everything from living arrangements, entrepreneurship jumped off. That thing was just thrown into my lap. Uh, my testimony is crazy, actually, but um, and here we are in this two-bedroom apartment. And I can honestly say, as much as I established my life in my house and everything was mine, my flat screen TV and my sound systems and my piece of being alone, a three-bedroom house, like, I had all the
Yup.
space in the world by myself, to moving into a two-bedroom apartment that is not even half the size. I had no anxiety whatsoever. And I even
And your
think, and I
fiance
even
and
believe,
her daughter.
and her
Not only
daughter,
a
right?
smaller space, but you
Like,
got 3 people living there.
right, sharing a small bathroom. You know what I'm saying? and just considering, just living in a house, considering other people that live there. You know, understand what I'm saying? And so, but we instantly made it work. Like for me, it wasn't much of an adjustment. It was just like I'm just happy to have a roof over my head. Where would I be if April wasn't in my life at this capacity on somebody's
Mm.
couch trying to figure out the gas company? You understand what I'm saying? But I went in, from a king size bed to a queen size bed to a bed by myself to a woman right beside me. You know what I mean? But the woman wasn't strange. The woman was my fiance.
Mm.
You know, and so it was grace. I could have had a lot of complaints. I could have had a lot of worries. I could have had a lot of thought, but I had none of it. I had my Xbox. I had a bag full of clothes over there in the corner. You know, understand what I'm
Right.
saying? And then
Right.
eventually I started moving stuff over, and April kind of lucked up because she got free cable. You know what I mean?
Got the Comcast guy.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask
And
you this. Let me
so
ask you this. So you
go
jumped
ahead.
right into, like, without expecting it, you went right into living with your stepdaughter. How,
Yes.
and let's just keep it real for a second. Did the idea, not even the idea, the fact that April was a mom, did that, like, deter you? Was that a red flag when you were starting to pursue her romantically? Like, when you were thinking about, like, oh, I could
No.
date this woman, I could marry this woman.
No,
Like,
no, no.
did the fact that she have a daughter sway you at all?
No, no, not at that level. Not at the point where we're already dating, and I'm about to propose. No, that I was 1,000% settled on my Zoe task. You understand what I'm saying? Zoe was a plus at that
Mm,
moment,
mm,
right? When I first met Zoe, however, it was always a thought. Let me just be 100. It was always a thought in the back of my mind that I could be with April again. Because for those who don't know, I dated April 10 years prior to that, and we were separated by like 1,000 miles. She went back home down south, and to
right.
to never be seen again. Like, you understand what I'm saying? And then 2018, she comes back to Philadelphia, and this friendship starts all over again. So I didn't know April outside of her being my girl. You,
Mm,
you understand what I'm saying? So it was always a thought in the back of my mind, like, yo, could this be a reason that she's back? Like, um, but when I first met Zoe, um, she she was always a special needs child. And so when I met her, she had tanks and tubes in her nose, and you understand what I'm saying? And being very unexperienced with something like that, the only thought I had was, this is intimidating. You understand what I'm saying? But even at that
mm,
moment, having that thought about Zoe, April was far from the radar of even dating. We were just meeting up for dinner with the baby. You understand what I'm
mm.
saying? As friends to catch up. But I think April was currently married. She was married to her previous husband at the time. So it was absolutely no romance there. It was just a thought in the back of my mind, like, is this the reason why she's back in Philadelphia? But that was when I first met Zoe. We had met up to go get some Chinese food. And so looking at Zoe at that age and all this medical equipment in her stroller, that at the time became very intimidating. Like, do I want to
Sure.
take on this burden? You understand what I'm saying? So that was the only thought, that being swayed on the negative side of ever being with April due to Zoe. But it's weird because when I had that thought about Zoe, April wasn't on the table to even be considered. And by the time April became considered, I was already falling in love with Zoe. That makes
Mm,
sense?
mm. Yup. Yup.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, that's awesome, man. And I think, like, hearing you say, like, hey, by the time you were ready to propose to April, Zoe was a plus. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like, it's not like
Hmm.
oh, I'm marrying April in spite of Zoe, but I get to marry April, and I get to like adopt Zoe as my bonus girl. Like
Yes,
that's like a
absolutely, yes.
beautiful thing. And so I was looking into and then it's like I knew the numbers were high, but 40% of families in America are blended families. And for those that don't know, a blended family is, the definition of that is just a family consisting of a couple and their children from this and all previous relationships. So me and Becky have what you would call a traditional family, where it's me and her and our two full biological children.
Right.
Whereas you are an example of a blended family with you and your wife, her daughter from a previous relationship, and then your son biologically together. 40% of households in America are blended families. So almost half, 2 out of every 5 kids, or 2 out of every 5 families are blended families. But 60% of children live in a blended family home. So blended family homes are larger, typically more kids, which makes sense, right? Because you got kids from multiple relationships making up a part of that, right? But it's just, it changes the dynamic so much when you have a blended family, which is not something that like I know as a dad, because it's just, you know, our biological children here. But how do you feel like, from your perspective, the blended family, like the pros and cons, like, because there's definitely got to be some cons to it, but there's also got to be some pros to the fact that it's this blended family? Or do you not even think about it like that? Is it just like, oh, this is our family, you know?
Well, in thought, I don't think about it like that. However, there is truth that there is pros and cons. One of the great things about, all right, the first question was the difference. The difference is with a blended family, 9 times out of 10, there's another party that is connected to the family that is not necessarily a part of the family, and that's the other parent, right? So that's a reality, and that in itself can cause tension between the new spouse and the previous spouse, right?
Sure.
And usually, you know, you hear some horror stories. But I've been fortunate not to have horror stories. In fact, last Father's Day, I actually gave him a small gesture of a gift, you know, and thanking him for being a great dad, because I have friends who are in blended families and they constantly have horror stories about dealing with the other parent. And I just wanted to thank him that he wasn't that guy. You understand what I'm saying? I don't have to worry about, you know, fights and arguments and disagreements and things of that nature. It seems that everybody's on the Zoe board. Like everybody's on Team Zoe, right?
That's how it's got to be, though. That's how it's got to be, man. Yeah, it's like the successful blended families I hear about, it's all adult parties have the best interest of the kid at heart. And if it ain't that, it ain't going to be a successful thing.
Yeah, not at all. So the pro is with the father. I'm trying not to say his name just for, you know, confidentiality purposes. Sure. But for the father, the pro is Zoe goes over there half the week. So that's one less kid that we got to worry about now. You know what I'm saying?
One less bedtime, you know one less bath time, bro.
Yes, all of that, bro. And don't get me wrong, Zoe is a plus, but she's still a child. We love our children. I think you said this. You know, well, you posted this. You said one of my greatest things is, you know, 2 of my greatest things is being with my children and then not being with my children, right?
You gotta have space to miss them. You know, let me miss you a little bit.
So yeah, every week we get to miss Zoe, because every week the way the custody schedule is set up, the first half of the week, like today is Tuesday, and I have to, like, I'm on Zoe duties Mondays and Tuesdays, because I'm off my regular job Mondays and Tuesdays. So I do everything Zoe. Take her to school, pick her up off the bus, take her to therapy, and at the end of my day, I drop her off with her father. You understand what I'm saying? And so, you know, and so I get to miss Zoe every day, and then that's the pro. But the con is is that you can't control with how the other parent parents at their house.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and it could, I could probably write a small book on the stuff that goes on with parents, and their children. Not that I'm an expert, but we have a different structure here than he do over there. And so one of the things that I made sure it was me that established this once again, because I'm experienced with children. I said, yo, when we make a decision, all three of us got to make this decision, because she is cute, she is cuddly, she is little Zoe, we love her, but she will play us against each other just so she can get what she wants. At this age, at 3, at 4, at 5, and 6 years old, she will play us against each other just so she can stay up all night, just so she can eat ice cream all night. You know what I mean? French fries all day. Like, nah, we need to be in communication about, if she's on punishment over here, she's on punishment over there. Like, you understand what I'm saying? And if we don't do this, like, we're not only it's really not about keeping Zoe on punishment as it is disciplining your child is a real thing for their development, right? If they're not held accountable for their actions at the level that they are held accountable to, then they are never going to grow with the mindset of accountability. So Zoe can fully understand that today is Tuesday, act a complete fool in school, act a complete fool while she's here before she goes to school, and then her mindset, well, it's going to all reset come next week because I'm leaving. Like, you understand what I'm saying? And I guarantee you, although she's a child, she thinks this way. When we say, no, you can't watch TV because you didn't eat your dinner, or no, you can't da-da-da-da-da, the first thing that comes out of her mouth is, I want to go be with daddy. And she's not talking about me. You understand what I'm saying? And so, I pull my wife to the side, establish things like, look, man, and certain things, I understand, like, we don't control what that man do at his house, you know what I mean? But certain things, we got to work together, because she's going to always, in a sense, give us the middle finger because she's leaving, and she's going to feel like it's going to reset to next week. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times it do. A lot of times my wife says stuff like, you're on punishment for a month, don't even ask. And then a week and a half go by because she hasn't been here. The punishment is lifted. And I'm watching my wife not enforce the punishment. And that's only because I know, like, it's kind of like her emotions, her anger, and her being upset for whatever Zoe did has kind of been reset.
Yeah.
You understand?
Well, it's hard when they're at that age developmentally. It's hard for them. They might not remember what the punishment is. Like 6 is very different than 2. It's like, if my 2-year-old's getting disciplined for something, it has to be in that moment. Otherwise, he has no clue what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's a real challenge. And that's where you said, like, the horror stories, because even when it's a good relationship that all 3 or 4 parties have, it's still a challenge, let alone if it's a poor relationship.
Yes.
Let me ask you, we're cutting up on time here, but I want to ask you about this, because I found this, one thing I always appreciate is that we can always talk about race stuff just with a very open, we've had so many great conversations just about race in our country today. But one of the things I found really interesting was between whites, blacks, and Hispanics, the percentage of families that are blended families is almost identical. Like, there's no difference. Cool. And I kind of expected it to be a little different just naturally, but it's almost completely the same. But one of the things that I was finding was studies were showing that black families had an easier time adapting to the blended family reality compared to white and Hispanics. And that's because of something called fictive kin, which is an actual term. And fictive kin is simply people with no biological ties in the family are considered family regardless of that. And bro, as I was like, you said you had like 12 god kids. And I'm like,
12.
Say what? Like, I told you, like, me and Becky was talking like a week ago, and I was like, I think we're somebody's like legal godparent. But I'm like, I don't know who they are. Like, but it's like, but like to me, like culturally, to me, a godparent is like if something happens to mom and dad, like we would take over raising that child. Like that's a passing of like legal guardianship. Is like how that's defined, at least for me and my family. That's not the same in the black culture, at least as far as you're concerned. And I think like you just walk into like a black church and everybody is brother or sister. Like they don't say that in my church.
Oh yeah.
You know, like you know, and so it's like I just think like culturally it seems like studies are showing that that black families are at an advantage.
Because I never thought this topic was recorded, right? Because that is a normal thing in the black culture. And to be honest with you, I didn't even think it was a black culture. I thought it was just so normal that everybody did it. But I do have people, or had people in my life who are not blood. My mom never married them, right? I have an Aunt Michelle where I don't know nothing about Michelle on her side of the family. I just know her. Like, you understand what I'm saying? And she's not a part of the family. I never actually, his name was always Keith. Growing up, my mom had a friend named Keith, and he wasn't an uncle. You know what I mean? I believe that him and my mom had some kind of dating relationship when I was a kid. He was the tool. He's no longer with us. He went on to be with the Lord, but he was the tool that God used to actually get me into my pickup truck in 2015. The last time I seen him, because we shared, that's kind of how we stay connected, that we shared the same birthday. And so it was because of social media. And he was extremely significant in my life in many ways. And not that my dad, nobody compares to my dad. My dad was always great. But you know, he was. And I couldn't tell you anything about Keith's kids. I couldn't tell you nothing about him beyond me knowing him. Like, you understand what I'm saying? I've never, you know, and so that's very true. I think the reason why this works for us is that since we're talking about race, and this might be far-fetched, and this might be the case, it may not be the case, but one of the reasons I think this is the systematic racism that's been applied to towards black families of having fatherless households. And so, or you know, you go to a village and you and I say a village, but I mean, like, you go to a community of black folk, you see more women trying to get their lives together than you do men. And so when you do get the jewel of the black man that isn't perfect, but he's on a straight and narrow, right? He's trying to get his life together. He's not whoremongering. He's, you know, he's somebody you could trust around your children. You understand what I'm saying? He's on straight and narrow, and anybody he has authority over, he's trying to lead on a straight and narrow. And that's literally how I became a godfather to all my god kids. It was like, yo, who would you want to trust your children to? That man right there. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, send my boy, and I got daughters too. I got goddaughters too. But like, send my kids over there because I feel like that man will lead them in the right direction. Because it's not a lot of those kind of men in the black community. We know just by looking on the news, some of our men we're incarcerated. Some of our men are slinging drugs. A lot of our men are running around with different women. Right? A lot of our men are cheating on their wives, and you know, and that's not all a racism thing. I'm not blaming all of that on systematic racism, but it is something to be said that it was kind of kickstarted, and then the culture kind of just adopted to men not being men of integrity, right? And so when you do get a man that grows through all of the trash that the culture has to feed them, and they want to be stand-up men of integrity, then yes, It's like, wow, look at that, and that's why black women crowd churches, because it's a pastor, it's a man up there
Mm.
that loves the Lord, who's educated, who dressed nice, that talks well. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Because if you do the ratio, the ratio is small. Even today, you do all living males, black males, the ratio is still small because the majority of them is still stuck in the hip hop culture. Not that hip hop ultimately is wrong, but in the culture of just being wild, right? And so I think, you come up and think about when I was a kid. I was born in the crack era. You understand? I'm literally born in the crack era, right? And so you get in, and it's just like, oh, my dad. I don't really know my dad lifestyle from back then. However, my dad has always been in my life, and whatever he had going on, he made sure I wasn't a part of it. You're right,
Mm.
and so and so by looking and now being a man, right? Because so some of my godchildren has phenomenal fathers, phenomenal fathers. I was still chosen to be a god. I was still chosen to be a godfather for whatever reason they chose me, but not because they didn't have dads. And
Sure.
there's some of my godchildren who fought at the time when I became the godfather. Fathers weren't either even present. Um, you know, and I was a healthy brother figure to the mom, and literally by trying to lead people in God, they turned around and gave me their children.
Mm.
You know, uh, even one of my goddaughters now, I became a godfather by the choice of the father, not even the mother, by the choice of the father. He was always around.
Wow.
He's still around. You know, and so and I take it seriously. I never had to be in a position where one of the parents, one of the fathers did pass, but he wasn't the best dad. So, but he did pass. But I never had to be in a position where both the parents are gone and I had to take him up. But guess what? If it happens, I'll be right there to
Oh, I
pick it
know.
up.
I know you will.
You
And I
understand?
think it's so powerful too, like not just being like, yeah, I'm here to pick it up if both should pass, but like I think just given that title, because it's like there's different kids that it's like, I was a kids and youth pastor for 8 years. So it's like there's a lot of different kids and teens that it's like I've played like a big brother role or more of that or a father figure role to them, but like it didn't have that title of godfather, and I think it just creates this personal family tie to it where it's like, all right,
Yeah.
Anthony's not blood, but he's family. And I think that's like a beautiful part of the black culture that, we don't have, like, and maybe there's some white people that do this. Like, that's not a part of where I come from.
I got two non-blood nephews somewhere in Indiana. And if they ever needed me, bro, like I would hop on a flight, I would drive my truck. Like, you get what I'm saying? And here's the thing, like they only really know me through a FaceTime thing. Like the oldest boy, like
he knows Uncle Anthony.
Was I around for Jason? Yeah. He knows, but he was a baby when he was here in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of his development over there in Indiana. But little did he know, he has a soldier on his side. And God forbid,
he knows Uncle Anthony, man. He knows Uncle Anthony. It's like when I came out to Philly a little bit ago, every time Mom asked him, he's like, "Where's Dad at?" He's seeing Uncle Anthony. It was like the whole weekend I was just gone seeing Uncle Anthony, which was half the weekend. But all right, before you hop off, man, if you could give one piece of advice, if there's a young man,
we have to do a part 2. You know that, right?
Huh?
You know we're gonna have to do a part 2, right?
Yeah, we will, man.
We ain't finished.
If you could give one piece of advice to a young man who maybe he's got a young lady that he's interested in, but she might be a mom, have a kid or two from a previous relationship, and he's struggling with that, right? Which is an understandable thing. What would be a piece of advice? Like, what would you say to him?
Well, you know, one is like, where's the struggle, right? Like, what are you
Mm,
actually struggling with? Because then that would tell me like, um, where kind of direct my advice to. Uh, it's a package deal whether you like it, struggle with it or not. So you really need
mm,
to make up in your mind if that child is something that you want to be a part of, because you don't even want to be with that mom if she's not willing to be with that child to be with you. You know what I'm saying? So it's a package.
mm,
It's a package deal, whether you like it or not. But fatherhood is a beautiful thing. Fatherhood will help you grow up, right? Because there's something in fatherhood that kind of that shapes you, that I can't continue to be wrong when trying to lead this child right. You know what I'm saying?
mm.
And so it's like an extra incentive, and it, it leads to maturity. Uh, I think there is a certain level of maturity that needs to be had, even to want to say, I want to marry this woman, right? Because kind of one of the first things we said when we first started recording was, it's easy to lead yourself.
Mm.
It's easier to lead yourself, right? If
Hmm.
you want to
Right. It's
go get
not
a
easy still.
one bed, right. You
Right.
want to go get one bedroom apartment, have some kind of car. You got bills to pay. You got things to keep up on. You can make all the money, but any adult know I can make $2,000 in my paycheck, but I don't have $2,000. You understand what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Right.
The
Right.
mortgage got money, the car insurance got money, the car payment got money. Like, these people got money, but I don't have this money. I just make this money to make sure they get it, so I can continue to use the benefit. So you can't see this, but I can see this. The wife is signaling to me digitally to say, "Hey, you need to leave to go pick up your daughter."
Yeah. Yeah.
So uh, we definitely gonna do a part two, because we didn't even get through half the list of questions,
I
but I
know,
still
bro.
think this was rich.
Hey, I appreciate you hopping on with me, man. Honored to have you as the first guest on Kicks and Minivans. And we will definitely have you on for more than one more episode.
Kicks and pickup
Um,
trucks.
Bro, I'm going to get you in a minivan before long, man.
Good luck with
All
that.
right. But love you, bro. Man, honestly, me and Ann could chop it up for hours, so I hope listening in on that conversation was inspiring and beneficial to you, especially if you are living in a blended family household, man. It's just a different experience that about half of us live in that sort of environment. And so it was great to hear from Anthony. Thanks so much for joining us, bro. I really appreciate it. Hey, however you're watching or listening, be sure, give us a thumbs up, hit that 5-star button, leave us a comment or review, let us know how we're doing. It really helps us as we're getting this thing started. And if you're not already, follow us on Instagram at Kicks and Minivans. We appreciate that too. Hey, until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your family.